Hello everyone, welcome to the 17-Mile Story Collection. Today we'll dive into the immortal cultivation diary of the young Zhao Sr. After fetching plenty of spring water, Zhao's son returned to his room and began preparing spirit-infused water. By nightfall, he locked the door, tied a rope to it, and fastened the other end to his arm, so the moment the door opened, he would know. After drinking several mouthfuls of the spring water, a warm current surged through his body. Zhao's son immediately grasped the pearl and entered the dream space. In the boundless dream realm, Zhao's son sat cross-legged, breathing and cultivating. The glowing orbs around him released soft beams of light as he meditated. When they touched his body, they dissolved into tiny motes that quietly seeped inside. Zhao's son remained completely unaware of this. After about a day, the spiritual energy from the spring water within him was fully spent. Yet this time, he distinctly felt something different. In the past, after drinking medicinal decoctions, his body would indeed feel a warm current, but over time, all of the energy would eventually fade away. This time was not the same. Although most of it still dissipated, a faint trace remained within him. It wasn't much, but it filled Zhao's son with tremendous confidence. He puzzled over it for a long time, but couldn't figure out the reason, finally attributing it to the mysterious pearl. Since he couldn't leave the dream world on his own to replenish the spring water, Zhao's son tried cultivating for a long while. Eventually, he discovered that this dream realm was different from the outside world. Outside, although he never felt the sensation of spiritual energy crawling into his body, after a month of persistence, each meditation left him refreshed and comfortable. But here, after the spring water's energy faded, further cultivation brought no comfort at all. On the contrary, prolonged meditation left him short of breath and stifled. After a moment's thought, Zhao's son had a vague guess. Perhaps this was because of spiritual energy itself. The dream realm contained none. The more he thought about it, the more certain he became. Frowning, he muttered to himself, "If only I could bring the spring water in here." At that thought, something struck him. He looked down at himself, confusion flickering on his face. He was wearing the red robes of an inner disciple. This puzzled Zhao's son. He quickly felt for the storage pouch he normally carried in his chest, only to discover it was missing. Clothing can appear in the dream realm, but the storage pouch cannot. After some thought, he decided to experiment once he was awake, testing which items could enter the dream realm and which could not. Time passed quickly. When 25 hours had elapsed, the familiar tearing sensation returned, and Zhao's son awoke in reality. One question still lingered in his heart. Why could he only last 2.5 hours each time? With that thought, he poured spring water into a gourd, tucked it close to his body, and prepared to re-enter the dream realm. But this time, no matter how long he stared at the pearl, no drowsiness came. A chill ran through Zhao's son. After thinking carefully for a long while, he forced down his worry, closed his eyes, and began breathing exercises. Gradually, his breath steadied, and the world's spiritual energy was drawn into his body. Most of it dispersed, but a faint trace accumulated within. Still, he knew he was far from reaching the first stage of qi condensation. A whole day passed in cultivation. During that time, Zhao's son kept lifting the gourd of spring water, gulping it down to ensure his body was filled inside and out with spiritual energy. But what weighed most on his mind was the mysterious stone bead. Again and again, he tried to grip it and enter the dream world, but failed every time. When night finally fell, he noticed something unusual. The spiritual energy inside him felt slightly stronger. Normally, he would have been overjoyed, but now he was restless. He raised the bead once more, staring at it. Suddenly, drowsiness swept over him. His face lit up with excitement, then he quickly looked away, and the drowsiness faded. In that instant, he realized something. Thinking back carefully to his previous attempts, he discovered a hidden rule. Entering the dream world had a limit. At least 2 hours must pass before it could work again. With this mystery solved, he moved on to his next experiment. What items could be brought into the dream world? He prepared 3 gourds, one filled with dew, one with spring water, and one empty. He tucked some broken stone bowl shards into his robe. Even a sweet potato and spare clothes he tied to himself. Then, focusing on the bead, darkness enveloped him, and he entered the dream. The first thing he did was check his body. The sweet potato was there. The clothes were there. The broken shards were there. But the 3 gourds and his storage pouch were gone. That's when it hit him. The dream space had no spiritual energy. Ordinary items could enter, but anything infused with energy could not. For a moment, he felt discouraged. If he couldn't bring in the gourd, then only a few gulps of spring water before entering would never be enough for proper cultivation. But then an idea struck like lightning. He couldn't bring the water itself inside. Yet once he drank it, the energy remained in his body, even inside the dream. Zhao Sen's eyes shone with joy. This was the true key. In other words, nothing was absolute. If Zhao Sun could find a loophole, maybe, just maybe, he could bring spiritual spring water into the dream world. After waiting 25 hours, he rushed out into the mountains, searching along the winding paths until he found several wild gourds. He hurried back with them in hand. His reasoning was simple. The old gourds had absorbed spiritual energy from holding dew for too long, which was why they couldn't pass into the dream. But freshly picked gourds were ordinary, free of any energy. If he filled them with spring water, perhaps he could trick the dream. And it worked. 2 hours later, Zhao Sun stepped into the dream world, carrying 4 or 5 gourds. The instant he arrived, he checked himself. The gourds were there. The water was there. The energy was still there. Overjoyed, he took a deep gulp, sat cross-legged, and began his cultivation in earnest. Every time the spiritual energy inside him faded, he drank again. Little by little, the energy accumulated, reshaping his body, pushing him closer and closer to the first layer of qi condensation. Around him, glowing motes of light quietly seeped into his body, silent yet constant. The truth was, with his natural aptitude, without the mysterious bead or the spring water, reaching the first stage might have taken him decades. But now, with endless energy and a dream space where time flowed 10 times faster, success was right in front of him. 2 months passed in the real world. But within the dream, that was a full year of cultivation. In that year, Zhao Sun thoroughly studied the mysterious bead, confirming he could enter 3 times a day, each lasting over 20 hours. That's 6 dream days in 1 real day. Cultivation was tedious, mind-numbingly repetitive. But whenever he wavered, the memory of his parents' hopeful gazes pushed him forward. And whenever he thought of Zhao Bu reaching qi condensation in just 3 months, a surge of unwillingness lit his heart aflame. So Zhao Sun locked himself away, pouring everything into his training, desperate to close the gap. At Penglai Pavilion, Zhao Sun was nothing more than a joke, a nobody in the eyes of everyone. Even his master, Niu Dazhu, had practically forgotten about him. And whenever he did remember, it was only with anger, forcing himself to push the boy from his mind. But this neglect, combined with Zhao Sen's own caution, always tucking the mysterious beads safely into his chest before falling asleep, kept him safe. For 2 whole months, no one discovered his secret. And during those months, the amount of spiritual spring water Zhao Sun drank was uncountable. Whenever his energy ran low, he simply gulped down mouthfuls. If Niu Dazhu knew, he would have gone mad with rage, maybe even killed him on the spot. Because in the entire Qin cultivation world, only a handful of reclusive old monsters had the privilege of bathing in such concentrated spiritual energy. Most would never dream of drinking it like water. After all, these springs were treasures, perfect for refining pills, boosting success rates, and enhancing their potency. But Zhao Sun? He was drinking them like they were nothing. And it paid off. His body brimmed with energy, stronger and stronger each day. Until one day, within the dream world, he felt it. Qi surging through his meridians, roaring like twin dragons, bursting from his nose and mouth in streams of white light. Then came the crawling sensation, like ants skittering beneath his skin. Foul black impurities oozed from his pores, soaking his clothes, filling the air with a nauseating stench. But Zhao Sun didn't notice. He was lost in the wonder of transformation, as every drop of spring water broke down, reshaping his body from the inside out. Time slipped away. When he finally opened his eyes, they gleamed with a brightness never seen before. His mind was crystal clear, his heart calm as still water. Memories flickered, his father's kind gaze when he was a child, his mother's gentle words, his relatives' sneers, the villagers' envy. He watched them all pass through his thoughts, not with anger, but with detachment. At last he had broken through. Zhao's sun had reached the first layer of qi condensation. Yet, as joy welled up, so too did a bitter truth. To step into qi condensation meant to open the gates of cultivation, to sever worldly ties, to cut away attachments. But Zhao Sun knew he could abandon everything, except the bond with his parents. With a long sigh, he brushed off his soiled clothes and slowly rose to his feet. His eyes grew bright as he looked around. At this moment, he could already sense the differences within the dreamscape. For instance, the glowing orbs surrounding him. Before, they had seemed utterly ordinary, but now he could perceive faint currents of spiritual energy flowing within each one. Though he still couldn't discern their exact changes, compared to before, it was like a blind man suddenly regaining his sight. Just as he was observing, the familiar tearing sensation came again. This time, however, it was far milder. Though still painful, it no longer made him break out in a cold sweat. In reality, Zhao Sun opened his eyes and sat silently on the bed for a moment. He immediately picked up the gourd and uncorked it. Inside, the spring water now appeared to him as threads of light, each strand brimming with abundant spiritual energy as it drifted outward. The corners of his lips curved into a smile. Having reached the first stage of qi condensation, he could now truly sense the aura of heaven and earth. Taking a deep breath, Zhao Sun suddenly realized his entire body felt sticky. Looking down, he chuckled wryly, just as recorded in the 3 chapters of qi condensation. Anyone who breaks through the first layer will expel a great deal of impurities. It was an unavoidable stage in the process of reshaping the body. He pushed open the door. By now it was already afternoon. With light steps, he quickly left through the east gate and went to the mountain spring. Choosing a spot downstream, he stripped off his clothes and washed. The black, greasy impurities clung stubbornly to his skin, and it took him half a day to finally clean himself thoroughly. Afterward, he lay on a boulder nearby, gazing up at the sky. His mind recalled a spell mentioned in the 3 chapters of qi condensation. It described in detail a celestial art called attraction technique. It was one of the most basic spells. Once a cultivator reached the first stage of qi condensation, they could cast it. Though the Penglai Pavilion had long since declined, once unifying the Qin Empire 500 years ago, it still housed a vast collection of cultivation methods. In principle, every inner disciple could freely choose techniques from the scripture repository, though elders often advised them to pursue the sword cultivator's path. Sword cultivation focused entirely on refining a single flying sword. Though the path grew harder in later stages, its early power was formidable and relatively easy to grasp. The attraction technique served as the fundamental spell for controlling a flying sword. Aside from this technique, the 3 chapters of qi condensation also recorded 2 other spells, Fireball and Earth Fissure. Zhao Sen's heart stirred as he thought of these 3 arts. Following the incantation for Fireball, he pinched his fingers into a seal with his right hand. Yet, not even the faintest spark appeared. After a long while, he frowned and tried again. Again and again he attempted, but each time ended in failure. Only once did a tiny spark flicker into existence, only to vanish in an instant. Talent. Always talent. Zhao Sun gave a bitter laugh. He then turned to practice Earth Fissure on a nearby rock. Though its results were slightly better than Fireball, the narrow crack that appeared was barely thicker than a little finger. Looking at it, he couldn't help but sigh. Such a spell might be enough to fool mortals at the foot of a mountain, but in real combat, it was utterly useless. Finally, he practiced the attraction technique. The results, however, remained far from satisfactory. When it came to success rate, the attraction technique proved slightly more reliable. Without hesitation, Zhao Sun focused all his efforts on it. In essence, the attraction technique was simply the art of controlling objects from a distance. With greater proficiency, and after reaching the 2nd stage of qi condensation, one could then practice the object manipulation technique. By the time they broke through the 3rd stage and entered the 4th, they would qualify to enter the Sword Spirit Pavilion and choose a flying sword. After half a day of practice, Zhao Sun made his way back before nightfall. Now that he had reached the 1st stage of qi condensation, his senses were sharper than ever. As he entered through the east gate and passed by the chores office, a familiar voice reached his ears. "Brother Liu, you first assigned me to chop wood. You said the task was complete as long as I chopped 100 jin. Why did you suddenly raise it to 1,000? I, Li Xiang, am not a newcomer. I've shown you plenty of respect these past few years. Why must you push me so hard? Do you really want to drive me down the mountain before you're satisfied? Li Xiang, don't act like I'm making things difficult for you. The year's end is coming, and I've got troubles of my own. But you bastard, you won't even work properly, and instead you try to smear me at a time like this? The firewood you chopped, I delivered it to the pill room, and they scolded me harshly. When I checked it myself, I found you had real skill, 100 gene of firewood, and at least 30 gene of it was water. That's impossible. You're slandering me. This is all because Zhao Fuguei gave you a talisman a few days ago, asking you to assign him easier work, and I happened to see it. Such a trivial matter, but everyone knows what kind of person you are, Brother Lu. Do you really have to drive me out of Penglai Pavilion for this? You bastard, I quit. I'll go to the elders right now. Li Xiang shouted angrily. Li Xiang, you forced my hand. Don't blame me. Blame your bad luck for seeing what you shouldn't have. Today, you're not leaving this place alive. If the elders find out, I'll wipe out not only you but your entire family as well. The chilling voice of Lu, the young man inside, was followed by Li Xiang's startled cry. Zhao Sen's heart lurched, and he rushed into the chore's office, kicking the door wide open. Inside, Lu's face was twisted with rage as he lunged with a dagger at Li Xiang, who was pressed against the wall in terror. At the critical moment, Zhao Sun realized he couldn't reach Li Xiang in time. Instinctively, he cast the attraction technique. To his relief, it worked. The invisible hand of spiritual force instantly restrained Lu. Still, the dagger's tip had already grazed Li Xiang's chest, leaving blood streaming down. Lu was horrified, his body crushed as though by an invisible weight. The dagger slipped from his hand and clattered to the floor. Li Xiang's face turned pale, sweat the size of beans dripping from his forehead. He cast a grateful glance at Zhao Sun before scrambling away. But Lu froze for a moment, then struggled violently. Zhao Sun broke into a sweat, clearly straining to maintain control. It was his first time using the attraction technique to bind a living person. Zhao Sen's strength was obviously insufficient, and the more Lu resisted, the harder it was to hold him. His body trembled slightly. Seeing that Li Xiang was safe, he let out a sigh of relief, and his grip slackened. Just as Lu was about to break free, Li Xiang's expression turned strange. He glanced at Zhao Sun, then at Brother Lu. A ruthless gleam flashed across his face as he quickly snatched up the dagger from the ground and rushed to Lu's side. Brother Lu's eyes filled with terror as he struggled violently. Li Xiang gritted his teeth, muttering under his breath, "A man must be ruthless when needed. Brother Lu, you forced me into this. And you still want to wipe out my entire family. Li Xiang, what are you doing?" Zhao Sen's heart jolted in alarm. At that moment, his attraction technique lost its hold. As soon as Lu regained control of his body, Li Xiang raised the dagger and plunged it into his back. A sickening sound, like a watermelon being split open, echoed through the room. Brother Lu had no time to dodge. His body convulsed a few times before falling still. The dagger slipped from Li Xiang's hand and clattered to the floor. He stood frozen, staring blankly at the blood-soaked corpse at his feet, his expression a swirl of emotions. Zhao Sun was stunned. It was the first time he had ever seen such a bloody corpse. After a long silence, he asked bitterly, "Li Xiang, you?" Li Xiang lifted his head, his twisted features revealing a feral expression. Word by word he growled, "Zhao Sun, you saw it yourself. I didn't want to kill him. If it weren't for you today, I would already be dead by his hand. This was all his doing. He forced me. He forced me." Zhao Sun said nothing. He hadn't expected things to end this way. Taking a deep breath, Li Xiang's eyes hardened with resolve. He crouched by the corpse, rummaging until he pulled out a gray cloth bundle. Opening it, he found several hundred talismans used by registered disciples to visit their families, along with a thread-bound ledger. He flipped through it briefly before tucking it into his robes. Searching the room further, he eventually discovered a hidden compartment beneath the bed. Inside was a single sheet of yellow paper. After a moment's thought, he turned to Zhao Sun and said, "Zhao Sun, I will never forget your help today. But I can't stay in Penglai Pavilion any longer. Once the sect learns of Lu's death, they'll investigate, and sooner or later they'll trace it back to me. I'll take the rest of these things. As for this talisman, the root of all this trouble, it must be something valuable. Otherwise, Lu wouldn't have wanted to kill me over it. You should keep it. With that, he handed the yellow paper to Zhao Sun. Zhao Sun didn't take it at once. He sighed and gave a bitter smile. Why? Why go this far? If only you hadn't killed him just now. Li Xiang frowned. Zhao Sun, don't bring this up again. I've had enough of this life for years. If you still consider me a friend, then take this talisman. Reluctantly, Zhao Sun accepted it, saying nothing more. Zhao Sun, I'm leaving. This matter has nothing to do with you. If the sect investigates, they'll pin it all on me. By then, I'll already be far from Punlai Pavilion. Humph. Genish Faust. I refuse to believe I'll remain a mere registered disciple for the rest of my life. Li Xiang's face was clouded with conflicting emotions. After a long pause, he slowly turned and left the room. Thank you for watching. If you enjoyed my video, please leave a comment, give it a like, and share it with others. Your support gives me even more motivation.